EPRI's office. We have on the order of about 30 folks here in person. Welcome to the 4th Annual Advanced Reactor Codes and Standards Collaborative Workshop, ARCSC. I'm going to wait for the... John, do you need to go switch to a different presentation? Got it. And I want to remind folks, this is a hybrid meeting, which is always tricky. So we're going to have to kind of manage folks' comments online. And for those of us here in person, we owe it to the folks online to be able to speak into a microphone of some sort. So for those in the room, you have these little black boxes with the red light hopefully on. I think the red light means it's muted. So if you want to ask a question, please grab one of those black boxes, local mics, click it on to a screen, and then ask your question, make your comment. That's not for us in the room. That's so that everyone online can also fully participate and hear what's going on. Same with us up here. Anytime you're speaking, folks online can't really hear you unless you're speaking into a mic. Okay, so welcome. I'm Andrew Sowder with EPRI. I'm my semi-formal role is ARCSC EPRI liaison, and I'm also currently the ANS Standards Board Chair. Okay, welcome to EPRI in DC, and also for those online. Welcome from the comfort of your home or office. So I think most of you know EPRI, but there are probably some folks that are new to EPRI, and just a brief overview. It's important for the discussions we have here. EPRI is a independent nonprofit 501c3 organization. Our mission is, from our start, is eventually making safe, affordable, reliable, and clean energy available for the public good. We are international. We started off US, but now we're an international organization. We receive about half of our funding in the nuclear area from non-US members. So we're essentially now majority non-US in terms of the nuclear area, and about a third of our funding elsewhere in the rest of EPRI. We do have offices around the country, headquartered in Palo Alto, largest office and laboratories setting in Charlotte, North Carolina. We also have laboratories in Knoxville and Lenox, Massachusetts, as well as offices in Dallas, here, Tokyo, around the world. Again, we do span the world. 40 countries participate in our R&D activities. And we also probably connect with about 80% of the world's operating fleet. So let's start off with some housekeeping. I'll start off with the virtual participants. Again, I know it's challenging sometimes when you have a hybrid meeting, so this will hopefully make your experience better. Please, if you're online, mute your phone or your laptop if you're not presenting or talking. Also, probably to facilitate the engagement, please use the chat feature at your lower right-hand corner. It's that little comment bubble that's shown here. Go ahead and enter that. We'll have several folks, I think, John Gaylor, I will be monitoring it, as well as we're going to draft Todd and Selmy as well. So we'll be watching that, and we'll raise that either during the session or after. So please make yourself known and make use of that chat feature. We are going to record this session. So this is your opportunity to either leave the room here or to sign off online. But for the sake of recording for folks who couldn't participate today, we are going to be recording this. So this is your warning, and if you stay on, you are in effect agreeing to participate. And we are, for any kind of webcast assistance, please contact our events coordinator, Lauren Helms, and that's her email, lhelms@epri.com. And also there's an audio call-in number if you need to use that. I will also kind of just state for those in the room and everyone online, the intention is to share these presentations in the near future. We'll be posting them to the NEI website for ARCSC. I think the intention is also to make the recording available, maybe edit it for ease of viewing. But yeah, we will be making those. We just have to make sure we have all the permissions. Your hosts here are me, Andrew Sowder, Lauren Helms, and D'Amico Shaw is manning the front desk. For those of you in person, this is where you are. It's sometimes good to know that. And then there's the front desk phone number. So again, as with most meetings in the nuclear domain, we'll kind of focus a little bit on safety. Let's take a pause and think about where you are, your situational awareness, all the usual things, where the exits are, are there any impediments in your way? Also, if you have any concerns, please let EPRI staff know. If you have any questions, please ask. The see something, say something mindset. Now for the kind of the essentials. I don't know of any fire alarm drills today, so if you do hear a fire alarm, it is to be taken as real. So the emergency exits in case of a fire alarm, again, you don't use the elevators. You will exit out of the EPRI suite as you entered. We are here. You'll exit out into the hallway where you entered the EPRI suite, and instead of going to the elevator bank, you'll turn left, and then there's kind of a center utility corridor. Here on the right are two dedicated emergency exit stairs. And again, we will rally out, I believe it exits out into the alleyway. Someone from EPRI will lead and I will follow to make sure everyone gets out. For the other kind of emergency, here we go. For the other kind of emergency, if I can fight with instead of turning right in that utility corridor, turn left and you have the men's and women's restrooms. Please do not mix the two emergencies up. Okay. And next, I'll just kind of go over the agenda real briefly before handing it over to Don Eggett, who is the ANS, the ARCSC co-chair and also serving as a representative of ANS, American Nuclear Society. So hopefully everyone grabbed a handout. I don't need to go over this in detail. It's kind of small on the board here, but again, these are the course of events. At about 10:30, we will have a break. We should have snacks and coffee available out in the lobby area. We'll be starting off with kind of a review of ARCSC progress to date. We will be addressing the North American Advanced Reactor Roadmap that's being kind of administered, maintained by NEI and EPRI. That has been recently revised and published. So in our area of technical readiness, there's two parts. One is on supply chain, the other is on codes and standards. So in the morning session, we'll be talking about the supply chain piece, which of course is essential for deployment and also has a lot of overlap with codes and standards. Then at 10, we will be hearing from our colleagues at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. They should have a lot of great updates. Now that they're back from kind of, I guess, an involuntary break over the last month or so, but I know they're back in the office, and they do have a lot to say about activities they've been pursuing in codes and standards space. After the break, we will be hearing some important feedback from one of the designer firms. So we have Rani Franovich here to be sharing input from Deep Fission. And also, this is another opportunity for any other developers out there. We do have lunch provided on site, so we'll go out, exit into the hallway there, grab your lunch, and reconvene. This is a working lunch, so we'll have a guided discussion over that time on starting out on risk-informed performance-based industry needs, and then a break, and then move into a continued guided discussion on risk-informed performance-based standards for civil structures, kind of giving us example of an actual RIPB standard and its application. Followed by the second part of our discussion of the revision to the North American roadmap. This is actually where we'll actually speak to the codes and standards piece of that. And then we'll kind of close out the day with a guided discussion on artificial intelligence as a major emerging application issue with probably a lot of implications for codes and standards in terms of the need for methods and controls, especially with regard to nuclear application. Close out the day with some wrap up and actions from today's event and adjourn. So I'll just wrap it up here before handing it off, just to kind of quickly touch on what purpose of today's workshop. Why are we here? Again, it is always useful to meet in person if we can, but also to convene everybody around the roadmap and the ARCSC work. So we've been at this for 4 years. Where are we at? What have we done? So we'll be reviewing that. We also do have a revision of the roadmap. How has that changed? What is that? How does that impact codes and standards work? Probably the most important thing here today is to hear from you in the audience, the stakeholders. You know, we're featuring NRC and AR developers, but in general, there'll be opportunity. The floor will be open for any and all input from the stakeholder. Of course, a common theme, continuing need for kind of guidance on pursuit and implementation of risk-informed and especially performance-based aspects of standards, and then kind of a dive into a newer but rapidly growing area of AI. Bless you. And so that's it for me. Any questions at this point on logistics? All right. Well, if not, I'd be happy to hand this off to Don Eggett. We'll start on the ARCSC progress to date. And again, I just want to remind folks, I know folks, you know, you're often eager to start speaking, but please grab one of those localized mics, turn it to green so that folks online can participate. Thanks. Don, do you want? Are you okay with that?
Hey, you work with what you have, so.
Well, we have a lavalier too.
Yeah, I may bounce around here anyway.
You sure?
Yeah, that's the I-beam, yeah. Good morning, everyone, both here in the EPRI office and those online. I welcome all of you to the 4th annual Codes and Standards Public Workshop. I look back when we first started this, and there's a number of people that are sitting in here, and I know online too, that were part of this initiation. And we were strategizing on how to move forward. So we did kick around a number of areas and a number of things we needed to do. And I think we've come along pretty well. And hopefully I'll be able to summarize in a short period of time what we did and where we are and where we think we need to go. So, of course, questions are always welcome. I know some of you have seen this a number of times, so bear with me. For those that haven't seen it, I think you'll find it relatively quite interesting. Yeah, I'm the co-chair of ARCSC. My fellow co-chair, Tom Vogan, I believe is virtually, he's online. So welcome, Tom. And I'm the immediate past chair of the ANS Standards Board. Andrew, I have to move this forward. Is that automatic?
You click there, there's about a 1 second delay, so, or you want, you can say next slide.
Okay. Yeah, next slide. Next slide, John. So these are the areas that I will focus on very quickly. The roadmap report that Andrew was alluding to in his initial opening remarks, the goals and charter of ARCSC, as we developed a number of years ago, we think we're pretty well in line in what we've accomplished. 23 to 25 accomplishments, the major one being the gap survey that we did on the standards that exist for all SDOs. That's part of that assessment and survey, what the results were. The other one is, what are the projected activities moving forward? And I think that's where we're going to need some feedback and interaction and discussions. We are in a process of completing the action items that were given to us in the initial roadmap report. We have an updated one, and we've been asked to be in an actual what do you want to call it, mood or stage, okay, of accelerating codes and standards and where they need to be at a certain time to support the advanced reactor designers and their accelerated plans themselves. And there are some closing remarks. Next slide, John. This slide, okay, it tells an awful lot. It's part of the roadmap. I won't get into the details on it. Just know that ARCSC, okay, is part of the technology readiness pillar, if you will, along with a number of others there. Then you have regulatory efficiency and the project execution. Next slide, please. We get support from NEI and EPRI as facilitators. They're extremely helpful, both not only in the administrative area, but also in the technical area and strategic and innovative thinking moving forward. Founding members, ANS, ASME, the CSA group, which is the Canadian group represented here by Larissa Logan. Then we have a number of representatives on ARCSC, and that's what I came up with. I think that's pretty accurate where we are right now, but we have multiple representatives from the the organizations that are listed there. So we have about 50 to 60 members of ARCSC. Next slide, please. These are the charters and goals. Share information, identify the needs, inform and complement, and then align the actions. And this has worked out pretty well. So the objectives say, and the mission say, to ensure the development, alignment, and timely availability of U.S., Canadian, and international codes and standards needed to support large-scale advanced reactor deployment. And that's the intent of these 4 goals that we put together here. And they've come forward fairly well, I really believe, because these were established back in late 2022 to early 2023. Think about really what they mean, and I'll think as we go through the discussions today, you'll understand how they fit. Next slide, John. So what I listed here is the action item we got that was part of the original 2023 roadmap report. That was to align and improve codes and standards, identifying the gaps and adjust the timelines for the advanced reactor codes and standards. A number of sub actions, okay, are listed there. And the last one is kind of the key one: secure resources to address gaps in and timeliness or timelines for advanced reactor codes and standards development. And that's something that still we need to identify timelines moving forward in a way to accelerate and have ready for the designers any codes and standards that they need. It's a difficult challenge, but it's something, okay, that we really need to grab hold of. The owners, they're listed there, and it is a priority one. We completed the gaps in 2024 and 25. Again, like I said, we need to adjust the timelines and to secure the resources for those that were set up as priorities. Next slide, please. This was action item 2, risk-informed, performance-based approach. One of the top cross-cutting issues in the industry, and we're in the process of addressing that. We initiated an RIPB task group last May. They've been working diligently on putting something together, looking for all the material that's out there in the industry. And they've even drafted a report. It's there, okay, for, I believe, anyone that wants to provide comments on it. I'll let Prasad and his team talk about a little later today in more depth. And we do have the owners listed there. I've added 2025 was a need date. I find that to be a relative year, so I added to be extended into 2026 for whatever we need to do yet. And I think that's a fair statement. Next statement, please. Just a timeline for you. When we started back in fall, next slide, please. And it takes us through to 25 and beyond. And I kind of put some words on the 25 and beyond, what we're looking at in moving forward and adjusting timelines to address the priority standards that need to be addressed. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the website that was developed going nearly 2 years ago, and I think this is an excellent job that was done by some of our participants, and I commend them for their work. It is available for you to go online, and you can see where you can actually go and look for it. Next slide, please. Briefly wanted to show, if you will, picturesque-wise or image-wise, what this really meant with the survey. We had to address the standards that were used, and those specifically for SDOs. We evaluated them, identified the gaps. There were common things also, okay, that were identified, and also what standards were still lacking. So overall, the results came out and actually show what the overall needs still needed to be done going forward. Next slide, please. And this is a good way of translating into what we did. You take a standard, number one there, was there a gap identified, yes or no? 2, what was the disposition of the committee? That is the committee within the standard development organization, be it ASME, be it ANS, IEEE, whatever it might have been. If it was a persuasive decision to move forward, then what would have been the proposed action that we're looking at? Anticipated timeline, and any resources that were needed, both funding and even manpower. The manpower was even supplemented by input from the members of the Roadmap Implementation Board, which were made up of a diverse number of organizations, specifically utilities, and they were willing to help and provide resources and manpower if we needed them. So that was something, okay, that came forward. And then it's summarized at the bottom there, you know, if you identified a gap, where did you need to go to actually come up with moving forward with a timeline and what the action would be. Next slide, please. This is a breakdown, prioritized gaps. ANS had them, ASCE, no specific priorities, although they are working on the priorities that will be brought out later today in their discussion. ASME had a number of priorities gap, mostly in the research and material area, very, very important. CSA group also, that's the Canadian group. They had their own gaps that they've been working through, and IEEE also. It doesn't mean that there wasn't other priorities in other organizations or like, let's say like AWS or others, okay, that didn't come out, you know, on top, but these were the ones in the significant SDOs that had to go back and address the gaps, if you will. Next slide, please. This is the list of common themes, cross-cutting across. You can take a look at them. There's 8 of them, and if you'll notice at the top, the RIPB is listed there. That affects all SDOs. It really affects the entire industry. And others as we move down the list there. I won't go into any details there. Just know that there are common themes that were identified. Next slide, please. So in summary, just recapping what we did, we determined the highest ranking codes and standards through a gap analysis survey. That was used in NEI 1903. Determined cross-cutting and common themes. Presentation updates in specific forums such as NRC and NEA. And then they were presented to the Roadmap Implementation Board in fall of 2024. The other one is request of designers and industry stakeholders. Feedback from the designers, we're always looking for that. What do they need? Where do they need to go? How can we help? Highest ranking codes and standards, high, medium, and low. They did an independent determination of what we did, and the validation came out extremely close. NAARCSC determined codes and standards having significance that were not identified in the gap survey. There are other subjects or categories that still may come out of those that we really didn't focus in on. There were actually 6 that we focused in on: the design, the O&M, the fuel, and licensing and stuff like that. So there could be others. I won't get into that list. There's at least a dozen of them there. But just know, okay, that still could happen. And just for anybody's information, the needs assessment survey still accepts any input from stakeholders. And you can actually go to the ARCSC website if you're interested, and we'd be more than happy to take your input. Next slide and final slide, I believe, Jen. Yeah. So anyway, that's the update on the progress. There you have the contacts as they are today. They may be different next year, I'm sure. Anyway, questions, comments from anyone? Prasad.
Can I just speak or? Oh. Thank you. Don, my question is, what happens when a product is produced on behalf of whatever ARCSC has asked for? You know, for example, the output of the task group that I'm chairing, you know, is a living document. The document itself is available on the ARCSC website. And what's not clear to me is what happens with the product? What is the impact that I can expect it to have?
The products, okay, that were identified as priorities, as I'm sure you recall, each SDO is addressing them. ANS, ASME, IEEE, and on and on. Those products, I probably should in some way be captured together on a timeline as we move forward, so everybody knows exactly where everything in, we're not moving them in parallel, but where they stand insofar as accelerating completion, if you will, for these priority standards. That's part of the gap survey, as you know. Okay. Now, the other one, and I look to you, Prasad, on the RIPB, the report that you're in the process of generating right now, based upon your efforts with your task group, you know, that's going to be another product. And that's a product that we can even provide comments back to you on what you've generated so far. So that will be a product sometime, probably early next year. I'm just guessing right now.
Well, I guess the question I'm asking is, there already is a product, but, you know, what happens with it? I've been telling ARCSC at each of our meetings, you know, the product itself is not the traditional, you know, bound document of some sort. It is a decision-making framework, you know, and it's available to the whole ARCSC community on the SharePoint website. And, you know, to me, what is most important right now is receiving feedback from the users of the product.
And I hear what you're saying. Interaction with users, as you put it, generally speaking, and with the designers is key. And I don't want to put you on the spot, Ronnie, but you represented a designer. Is there any comments that you can make right now from Deep Fission standpoint on standards that, hey, we're okay for moving forward with our SMR, you know, design approach, and we haven't really identified anything yet based upon what products have been identified or what the results came out from the gap survey. I don't know if you can or not. I don't want to put you on the spot, but, you know, it's the designer's feedback. We're going to complete these priorities as best as we can and put them out there in some type, shape, or form where they know they're there, and maybe even move on to some other subject categories, although those haven't been identified by the designers to us to say, we need you to look at another area. We don't know that, and we don't plan to do that unless we're told to do so. Rani, do you want to say something?
Sure. I think what Prasad is asking about is more of a process. What's the... Thanks, Don. Rani Franovich, Deep Fission. I think what Prasad is asking about is more process related. And when I give my presentation, I'll go into detail about what Deep Fission needs. But I think he's asking a process question. Am I right, Prasad?
Yeah, basically that is the question.
Want to say a word? Sure.
We need both of them. Rich Stadel, General Electric. It brings up a good point, because in the 4 years since we started this effort, a lot of standards have been revised, right? Dozens of standards have been revised. So the gaps that might have been some of the gaps that were identified up front, a lot of those could be closed, right? And I don't see that we're tracking closure of those gaps, right? So it almost seems like the database that we've created needs to have some continual update. So as gaps get closed, we kind of flag that in some way. And I'm not sure that's built into the process right now.
Yeah, I think we'll probably have that as an action item moving forward into 26. We need to move on, but is there any other final comments? Go
Hanfang, NSC. Slide 14, please. What the basis behind the prioritization, the needs or the complexities associated with the topic or something else when you say height priority?
Say that again.
Those topics identified as height priority, what the basis behind that? Why you consider those are the importance and high priorities?
These, you're looking at them in general, as far as prioritization and importance of significance. You go up and down. Seismic analysis is being worked on right now diligently by ASCE and other colleague partners, if you will. Advanced manufacturing material fabrication, that's going on right now. And I know NEI has got a lead into that. And I'm not sure personally, okay, I believe NRC is part of that effort too. Correct me if I'm wrong. But in digitalization, okay, is working on too. So maybe out of the 8 of them there, we've got our hands on at least half of them anyway, to give the people a perspective on where we are right now and where we stand. Larissa?
Yeah, I think the question was about how did we assign the priority rating to that? I've got it. Thanks for that. Larissa Logan from CSA speaking for those online. We did conduct the prioritization survey, which was based on, we used the criteria from NEI 1903 to select the criteria and to kind of validate that with the survey respondents. So I just pulled it up. So the criteria included, will the standard support design efforts, licensing review, reduce component fabrication time, reduce facility construction time and costs, and reduce O&M costs? And so based on how many of those kind of got a check mark that, had higher number of kind of checks against those 5 criteria, then it got a high rating versus medium and low. Hopefully that answers the question.
Andrew, are those microphones okay, working well? I don't know. Anyway,
I'll remind folks, the microphones are for the folks online. Those are not necessarily coming through the speakers in the room. So if you're speaking here using those, you also need to speak up for the rest of us, but we're a small group. But I did do a sound check. They're working.
all right, good.
And
Okay,
I'll
thank you.
also make an action item. I think we can share, because I know we have presentations from the prioritization and the process. So we'll also post those as well, past documentation.
I just want to make a general comment, and Larissa, this is just to maybe compliment your comment. A lot of these were based upon tick marks or responses we got back from people that did the evaluation. And hypothetically, if you had 400 people coming back and say RIPB is very important, and remote reactor, so let's say was 200. So you just kind of ranked it according to how many feedback and responses you got. That's how this was kind of like laid out. It adds no other bearing except the responses that we got back from the people that actually looked at them. But look where seismic is. Seismic is very important. That's ongoing right now. And we're going to have a product, I know, next year in 2026. So anyway, just a general comment on that. Okay. John, you want to go to next section? Okay. This is the session. I was hoping to get a little bit more time. I'm not sure it's going to work, but I'll do my best because I did want to reference the roadmap report that was just updated on certain sections I wanted to point out, and that's really to provide changes in general to the roadmap that I think would be a reminder to all of us. If you read the roadmap report, and if you haven't, you should be aware of it. I read the revision, which is and is available, that came out in September of this year. It's revision 1 to the revision 0 of 2023. There are definitely some changes. I didn't see anything that was overwhelming and overbearing, but they're definitely okay. Has been a different focus and insights on what's transpired over the last 2.5 years, both within Washington, both within the industry and what we're doing. And I'm just going to briefly go through, cite some particular areas or pages within the roadmap I just want to point out to everybody. And in the executive summary, they talk about the significant progress that we've made, and some of the key successes that we've gained. And I'm just going to list them here real quick. I'm not going to belabor them. The startup of Vogel units 3 and 4. The Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission approved one construction license for the BWRX 300. And also, okay, there's been some, by the NRC, 3 commercial construction permit applications. Congress passed the Advanced Act in 2024. New programs have been launched to support the deployment of the grid scale Generation 3 reactors. States have passed dozens of bills to, if you will, rejuvenate the need for nuclear power within the state that at one time they were in a moratorium. Regulatory agencies are actively streamlining their licensing processes. I think that's important. I think that's going to be a big benefit. There's been private investment significantly. Investors are very interested in this, in what fits, if you will, their strategic plan in the nuclear energy area. We need to triple the capacity, and we have leading tech companies in the United States that have come forward. Those were the successes that were identified in the updated report. They talk about updating the roadmap components and their strategy and implementation. Some of these are probably somewhat similar, but the enablers that were identified for the key opportunities include regulatory efficiency, siting availability, and permitting. Supply chain ramp up, very key area of supply chain. And another key area is workforce development. And they say here there's a total of 49 key issues organized into the 13 strategic elements that were identified in the actual roadmap report. If you look at the table of contents, it talks about the updated vision, approach, the enablers, the key issues, and the implementation again. And I thought one area I thought would be to go over is how the vision may still be the same or slightly modified based upon where the insights are now. So now it has 3 sections in the roadmap. This is the approach, the strategic conditions, and again, what are the key issues that we need to keep our hands around? And there's support of 6 primary audiences in no particular order, if you will, but they're all important. That is the owner and the operators, policymakers and regulators, financial institutions, stakeholders in the public area, including local communities, indigenous nations and communities, and industry stakeholders, that being us, if you will. So if you read the vision, it's only 2.5 pages long. I think you'll get a good capture of where we are right now. And I meant to say in the beginning, if you have this report, I'm sure, I know ARCSC members have it because it was sent and it's online, or it's within our if you will, our package that's online. Please read it. I've emphasized more than once, you need to read it. It's just to keep you up to date. If you have, great. Then you really know some of the things I'm pointing out right now. And at the end, they summarize the priority actions as they see them right now. And some of these, okay, are some of these are broken down. Well, they broken down the priority 1 and priority 2 action items according to the strategic element. And I broke it down that licensing has 5 priority 1 action items. The environmental and siting has 4. Fuel cycle has 1. Plant and system structures and components design have 2. Supply chain has 4. Codes and standards, RRA has 2. And one of them, okay, is the one that's been added to support the supply chain ramp up from a codes and standards perspective on the commercialization side. Project management 1, engineering and procurement 1, construction and commissioning 1, and initial operations and maintenance. And then workforce development, okay, has 2. So I thought it appropriate, at least to give you a flavor of what's in there, generally speaking. And I thought the rewrite was a good effort. I really do. They brought on some new insights and things, okay, that we need to be aware of. But I don't want to say much more about it, but it is an excellent reference book and we have to abide by it. It's got all the priority actions in there. Comments, suggestions, anything okay, just on general changes to the report? Okay. Technical readiness, supply chain, key area, very key area. We all know that. I would call it our married partner, if you will. I think everybody will. Supply chain is important, but you know, we're trying to support supply chain in parallel, okay, through the industry to the designers, etc. So what I really like to do is I like to turn this over to Mark Richter from NEI, and he's been initiating a lot of these supply chain, if you will, discussions, okay, with the Department of Energy, probably even through EPRI, and even brought to the ARCSC a number of times where things stand, formal letters and stuff like that. So he's in a position to talk a little bit more about supply chain and where he thinks it might be. Mark.
Okay, Don, thank you very much. As Don mentioned, this is Mark Richter with NEI. I'm going to try and take 15 minutes worth of discussion and pack it into about 8 or 9 so we stay on schedule. But what I want to do is maybe start at a very high level and begin to paint a picture, which I think will be important to provide context for where this group, the ARCSC, fits and our points of tangency and how we are part of a bigger picture for deployment. So let's take a couple of steps back. And those of you that were part of this group from the beginning and others that have joined as we go sort of understand that this group came together as a means to meet one of the actions in the first version of the roadmap, and that was to assist or enable the deployment of advanced reactors in North America. Well, a lot of things have changed since then. Not only are we now maintaining some focus on clean energy and carbon-free energy, we have an additional focus, a very strong and amplified focus on U.S. energy dominance. And nuclear energy is really being cast as a significant portion of what an energy portfolio would look like in an energy dominant sort of a framework for the United States. So, and also in addition to that, in terms of sort of a high level policy perspective, the market has changed quite a bit as well, even in the few years that this group has been together. And that would include, you know, just the rapid growth of artificial intelligence and the need for these massive data centers to support that kind of an industry. So now, not only are we talking about the flexibility and versatility that you get with small modular reactors, advanced reactors, microreactors, transportable reactors, all of those things, we're now talking about gigawatt scale reactors once again, and in relatively large numbers. The thought being that we're going to need that sort of capacity to support, you know, a growing energy market. So sort of the complexion has changed a little bit. And this group's work, though, still remains focused in codes and standards. But I think if we look at the bigger picture, you know, advanced reactor codes and standards, as we named ourselves early on, is really a subset of nuclear codes and standards, which is yet a subset of all the codes and standards. And I think as we look at the possibilities of supporting a growing industry, you know, not only are we focusing in still on the advanced reactor codes and standards, there's a bigger picture here, you know, even the ability to utilize commercial codes and standards for nuclear applications. So in that bigger picture, that's where this group fits. And, you know, one of the things that we have always said is that codes and standards are an enabling function for the supply chain. They're an important piece. So when we think about deployment of new reactors, whether it be gigawatt scale or something smaller, there's a lot of pieces to deployment. Supply chain is one of them. And if you look inside supply chain, the work that we're doing is most closely aligned, I think, with manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, materials, and new materials. So I think there's a general recognition within the roadmap community and the industry leadership that materials manufacturing are a cornerstone of future deployment of new reactors. So with that in mind, you know, we're looking more broadly at what we can do to sustain and grow a supply chain and continue to support the legacy operating fleet and support the potential deployment of gigawatt scale reactors. So there's a lot going on here. And, you know, when we look at deployment, we think about it's more than just a code and a standard, developing it or updating it. The deployment either of a new material, a new process, a new plant, it begins with the idea. Then you transition to, you know, a design, maybe some testing, maybe some prototyping. You get in that design loop, and then you produce a product. So there's a lot more to a deployment process than just a code and standard. So that's where we fit in that bigger picture. Now, in terms of some of the bullets that we've laid out here, a couple things I do want to touch on. NEI has undertaken with Ernst & Young, or commissioned them to perform an independent or a third-party assessment of supply chain capability and readiness. That would be, we think, a valuable input, sort of an outside perspective, looking in terms of where we are with supply chain. NEI has undertaken an initiative to look at the quality assurance elements in the regulatory framework and the possibility of using an international standard like ISO 9001, in addition to the current NQA1 program that's used to meet Appendix B. And I just want to digress here for a minute. I know there's been probably some misunderstanding or misinterpretation relative to our intent. We have not proposed to use ISO 9001, first of all, to replace Appendix B, nor have we proposed to use ISO 9001 by itself to meet Appendix B. What we have submitted in our guidance, which is under NRC review now, is to utilize ISO 9001 with additional requirements and additional controls that would be imposed as part of a gap assessment that is embodied or built into that guidance. So that's one of the things that we're looking at, because when we think about the possibility of building 200 or 300 new reactors in the next decade or two, the current supply chain would be probably challenged to meet that, if we're objective and honest about that. So those are the things that we have going on in supply chain. One of the things that is sort of a wild card in all of this is the wholesale rulemaking that's underway at NRC. That's in response to the executive orders. That puts some additional wind to the sails and provides additional urgency for what we're trying to do. We don't really know we know the extent is going to be broad. We don't know details yet of what will be in that rulemaking rather. To use Washington speak, there's not been a lot of leaking relative to the content. So we're anxious to see what the draft rulemaking looks like. I think it's going to be coming out in phases or in waves beginning in January, maybe extending into March or April. I'll let NRC maybe comment on that in more detail later. But from what we're hearing, it's going to be 8,000 to 10,000 pages, and there'll be a 30-day review. So we will be hustling and probably looking to many of you to help support some of those reviews. Yeah, some of the other things that we have talked about, and I know Don mentioned, we approached DOE about the possibility of some funding support for some things that were kind of focused in on what we're doing with QA or maybe even with codes and standards. With the change in administration and the executive orders, some of that I think is still sorting out. But in this whole process, we're going to continue to look at the DOE labs as a primary source of research, but more in an applied sense. And we've had some discussions with the AMMT leadership. I think they're very eager, very anxious to work with industry to identify what really needs to be done, sort of more like a pull model instead of a push model, rather than the labs producing something and say, hey, can you use this? We would like to pivot to a model where we say, hey, industry needs this, and the labs say, okay, we'll do it, we'll produce it, test it, we'll try and make it work. And so we're going to be trying to move in that direction. And towards that end, a number of us at NEI, EPRI, ARCSC, and a few others have had some discussions about standing up a multi-organizational initiative for accelerated deployment, which would include, among other things, codes and standards, but also the materials and manufacturing technology as well. And what we see as a real need, if you look at this deployment process being these multiple activities, the industry does a lot of good work, but we tend to work in silos, and our points of tangency are not always supported with the greatest effective communication. So we want to try and develop a tool of some sort that will identify all the things that need to be deployed, quote unquote, all the activities that are in that deployment process, who owns it, in order to identify accountability, figure out where the gaps are, see if there are areas where two entities are working on the same thing and not being efficient with resources. So these are ideas that we've kicked around. I think in our last discussion, it looks like this is going to take off, take root. Again, still developing the details on that, but it will be an opportunity to maybe in a one-stop shop sort of address some of these questions that we continue to ask and try to get answers for. And it's going to hopefully bring together the reactor designers, the developers, supply chain, customers, whether it be utilities or industry that has dedicated applications in mind for reactors. So we've got to have those groups together, and they got to be talking in detail. So we hope to meet those needs with this accelerated implementation initiative. So I'm probably out of time, and I'm probably out of words. So let's see. Oh, I have 12 seconds left if there's any questions. Yes. Microphone. Yeah.
Oh, you've got the same thing.
I'll just use this. Yeah, okay. Mark, one of the things you mentioned was this whole idea of non-nuclear standards and differentiating them from nuclear standards. You know, shouldn't that show up as part of the supply chain? Because non-nuclear standards are, available in plenty in some cases. And yet, if that's not being used as part of what's available for nuclear, something should change, isn't it?
Well, you don't see a bullet point here. I mean, we could probably put, another 15 bullet points here of things that are worked or need to be worked on. But I do know that the non-nuclear codes and standards is something, Don, you can tell me if I'm wrong, is something we're going to be taking on or looking at more closely as our next phase in codes and standards work. I mean, we recognize that there's opportunity there where you don't have to start from scratch necessarily. And other industries use them. They use them to great benefit and with great success. So to your point, we would be remiss in not trying to utilize some where it makes sense to do so. Anyone else? Anyone that's online or virtual? Yeah, we have a question here about the NEI guidance document 2204, which is the process that I alluded to earlier, where a nuclear purchaser could use an ISO 9001 supplier. That guidance document includes a process for screening and a gap assessment with the supplier as a step towards being able to utilize that supplier. We submitted that to NRC back in May. We had a public meeting in September. The NRC recently issued what they're referring to in air quotes here as a no flaws letter, meaning that in their initial review, they didn't see any significant issues that would preclude its endorsement as it works its way through the more formal review process. I mean, I'm sure there'll be questions and some RAIs and other things, but they're basically giving it the green light to complete the review process without any major issues. So we're hoping, now the one thing we don't know is how that's going to be picked up and potentially incorporated into the new rulemaking. We anticipate that when we get on the other side of the rulemaking, that process will be there in some form or fashion, whether or not it's within the rule or it's some other sort of regulatory document or tool. But we're pretty optimistic that we will see that in some form, sometime towards the end of next year. So thanks for the question, Mari. Anyone else online or in the room? All right. Well, Don, I'm going to hand this back to you.
Thank you, Mark, for the update. Some details and more of the high level on where things are and where we need to go. Just a comment I'll make, we have had the advanced manufacturing materials technology. There's been a few meetings that have been occurring already over the past 6 months or so. And as Mark alluded to, there's numerous representatives, moving that forward with a plan schedule for coming up for 2026 and beyond. From a supply chain point and a marriage of codes and standards or ARCSC, I have been looking and haven't seen yet anybody from supply chain, if you will, reaching out to ARCSC for codes and standards to support that. I'm still looking for that. It's something, we do need to follow up on because it is an action item, that we have for 2026. So be aware of that. So there is a follow-up on that needed. That brings us to the end. I don't want to take any time away from the NRC on their presentation. So with that, our next speaker from the NRC will be Raj Iyengar. And if I mispronounce your name, I totally apologize. If But anyway, Raj, you have the stand up here. I'll get out of your way. We look forward to get an update from the NRC on where they see codes and standards moving forward.
Thank you, Don. Are you getting the slides, John? Good morning. It gives me an immense pleasure to be in front of you today to talk about some of the activities in an important codes and standards program that NRC has been engaged in for nearly 30 years now. That said, you probably would have had a better speaker today. My boss, the standards executive, is not available mainly because of some of the many important things that I think Mark was mentioning about the rulemaking activities with respect to the EO. Lots of things are going on. And I do want to preempt any questions on that. I do not have any more new information than what's available in the public website on EO 14300. So Christian did talk about it in the last standards forum. It doesn't mean you shouldn't ask those questions. You can still ask. Thank you. I'm Raj Iyengar. I'm from the Office of Nuclear Regulatory Research in the Division of Engineering, and we got the Codes and Standards program transferred to my branch. My supervisor or division director, Christian Araguaz, is the NRC Standards Executive delegated by our Executive Director of Operations. He is very energetic, and I think we have a lot to say, not today, but maybe just hold on for another couple of months. You'll have a lot more exciting information coming to you. But today, let me just go through quickly in light of the time. Next slide, please. So I'll just take maybe 30 seconds. This is something, a responsibility that all federal agencies have. And in fact, it was passed 30 years ago under the National Technology and Transfer and Advancement Act, NTAA, which NIST is the ombudsman for that program. And so we all have responsibilities to interface with standards development organizations on with respect to codes and standards, concerns codes and standards, and see how we can incorporate within our regulations as long as it fits well. And that's why we have the endorsement process, which I think we'll talk more about it in a couple of months. And soon after that, that act, OMB came up with a guidance. It's all available publicly. And then we have our policy, how we adhere and manage our codes and standards program through our MD 6.5, all available in the NRC public website. We constantly updated depending on the needs, priorities, and changes we see. And currently, we're going through an update of the MD 6.5 to incorporate some of the enhancements that came out of something I'll talk about in a minute. So that's the background. It's something that we all adhere to. I did want to mention that it is not essential that the licensees follow codes and standards. I mean, they can use, adopt anything, and we have the responsibility to review what's given to us. It makes it easier for you, licensees, industry, and us, if the codes and standards are established and endorsed. Next slide, please. So we have been, as I mentioned, over the past 30 years, we've been actively participating in various SDOs. We've listed some of them. We do have representatives on high priority, important code and standards development committees. We can do all of it, but as you know, that things are evolving very differently with advanced reactors, so we have to expand our reach of what we engage in. We coordinate with 36 government agencies with respect to codes and standards through multiple different engagements. We also work with industry organizations under applicable MOUs. EPRI and ARCSC is one of them. I participate in the ARCSC meetings periodically, and we collaborate with national labs, in particular with INL, which was instrumental in some of the things I'm going to talk about. We do review and endorse codes and standards as applicable. We have through via reg guides mainly. That's probably one of the best avenues. We have over 300 reg guides endorsing codes and standards. Focus areas for now, not ever, because focus areas always change. Now, I think everybody alluded to it, advanced reactors, new reactors, they are all expanding our innovation universe into new things, different things that we have not been used to before. So that offers some challenges, but also offers immense opportunities for efficiency. And so how do we balance that? So advanced reactor materials is a very key aspect for our work. And we have done some reasonable endorsements for some of the ASME Section 3, Division 5. I mentioned that. And then digital INC and risk-informed methods, which always is important because most codes and standards are deterministic. And should it be deterministic, deterministic is one element of risk-informed thinking. So how can we expand this? This is not, we can do everything. This is what the SDOs have to be thinking and expanding their space in terms of involving innovative thinking. I know Prasad is going to talk a little bit about that. And then QA has become another important topic. We did have a standards forum. I'll go through that. So these are things that we are focused on currently. It doesn't mean this is exclusive, but we also are looking at current operating fleet and advances in codes and standards there as well. We, of course, continuously enhance our process. Next slide, please. Don or John, please let me know if I go over time. So I'll just speed up. So enhancement, we always have to enhance stuff. That's how we operate. Everybody operates because, you know, we never want to be lax or in a status mode. So the past focus has been large light water reactor designs, and now we have innovative designs coming up, some things that have not been tested, don't have operation experience. So how are we going to enable the safe use of such new technologies and new reactors? That's something very important to all of us. And of course, we have been constantly thinking about every single day on the topic. The other aspect is resources. Do we have resources to support everything? Obviously, we have to be very efficient because, and it's also reflected on new mission. So we need to selectively choose the high priority safety, high safety impact activities in codes and standards. So we are looking at a multi-year rulemaking, not, which involves more flexibility for advanced reactors. And currently, the one that we are working on and the executive order is the most expansive and impactful one. You'll probably know all about that in the next several months. So there was, in the future, what do we want to do? How can we enhance engagement in standards development? That's one of the things we have been talking about. I think we have a good story to say, but you have to wait until next January. I'll tell you why. And we also have to be very efficient in how we do stuff because we have diminishing resources, but we don't want resources to be an excuse for advancement. Next slide, please. So last year, there was a collaboration with INL and NRC, which focused we had a focus group looking at how can we enhance our engagement with codes and standards, how can we endorse things more efficiently. So we did have a public meeting last in April 2024, and we heard a lot of feedback. We got a lot of feedback from industry licensees, external stakeholders, STOs, and based on that, we developed an action plan, which is also publicly available, and it was formalized on December 19th through last year by my current division director, Christian Araguaz. So where are we now on that? It's almost a year now. So let's see where we are. Next slide, please. So just in the action plan, I'll show you the ingredients. The components of the action plan is we took the input from stakeholders. We have 17 actions within 3 areas: standards development, process improvements, endorsement, process enhancements, and how do we leverage commercial standards. That's another important thing that just came up, not just with respect to ASME Section 3, Section 8, but it's also expanding, as you can see, into many different areas. So we had 3 timeframes: swift actions, which we want to do within a year, intermediate within the next couple of years or so, and the program enhancements will be ongoing. So these were things. The next 3 slides will capture the components of those various areas. Can you go to the next slide, please? You probably heard this many times, so I don't want to reiterate this, but I just wanted to provide this as a reinforcement because how important it is to us. So we've been asked to publish a list of prioritized concerns, code and standards, what we engage in, what we consider to be important and high priority, and make it available for everybody to make sure that's complete transparency on how NRC is involved in these committees. That's the swift action. And then we're also looking at how can we incorporate risk-conformed performance-based insights with the new and revised standards. And this is not new. This has been our mantra for many years on how to look at performance-based risk insights on everything we do with respect to safety and risk. And program enhancements, continue our public engagements. Next slide, please. These are the process improvements. Endorsement efficiency, this is enhancements, is something important where we wanted to have an expedited review of the Section 3 Division 5, which we did within a year. And I think we did have extensive feedback on our endorsement of one of the alternative approaches to NDE. We did respond and issued the final reg guide, which I think was a remarkable activity, given the fact that this iteration of endorsement involved new materials composites, which we had not seen before, which we've not been actively engaged in. So we had a lot of things we've done in this area. So that's success. The next one is the efficiency. How are we going to enhance the endorsement efficiency process? We have made significant headway on that one. And you'll have to wait until January 28th for Christian Araguaz to roll that out. And certainly your feedback will be important, and it has to wait until then. So that's almost done. So, we are rolling here. In the intermediate activities, we need to update our management directive with respect to all the database that we will be issuing. We've already issued. And also, how are we going to enhance the endorsement process? How are we going to engage with the codes and standards committees and STOs? That update is happening. It's probably will be done mid next year. So program enhancements, of course, we always have to look at efficiency gains for all the actors involved. And we are trying to see how we can leverage artificial intelligence and LLM models to update reg guides faster. And that's something we will be planning to do next year. Next slide, please. This is the commercial codes and standards. This is a new territory that we have been, I don't know, forced into, or maybe in response to all the desires, in response to. So this is something we had a steep learning curve, but I think it's not as steep now. We've really gotten a good feel for it. We'll engage with all of you in January to talk more about it. And we want to see how we can incorporate some of these commercial codes and standards into our reviews, licensing reviews. So that's basically what we'll talk, the action plan has. Let me go to the next slide, please. So what's the status? Of course, it's a tall order to put all 70 items, and but we don't have that many people. As you know, we are sort of understaffed, I should say. We have made significant improvements, and we have met many milestones, more than we actually thought that we would within a year. So this gives you a list of what things we have completed. As you can see, that many of them are green. And the 2.2 new enhancement endorsement process is in progress, but it's probably green because you have to wait until January. We had the shutdown. Otherwise, you would have had the standards forum on November 13th. You would have known this more earlier. So I think we are in a very good shape, as you can see, in terms of how we deliver. Next slide, please. Just to give you a list, because I don't want to go through any of them in detail, just to give you a list of things that we are closely watching in terms of looking at engagement with those codes and standards committees, looking at endorsement avenues for these. These are some of the codes for advanced reactors that we are looking at. Next slide, please. So I wanted to tell you, we did have, luckily, my boss wanted something. We were actually originally scheduled having a standards forum in November. And then he came up and said, well, should we have one more, like 3 weeks? He gave us 3 weeks in September. And we said, yes, we'll do it. It was within 2.5, 3 weeks, we held this standards forum in September. Many of you would have participated. And you know what? It was such a blessing because we didn't know 5 days later we'll be shut down for 45 days. So anyway, so that was good. It really gave us a lot of engagement with you all. We heard some good input and feedback on a number of activities the SDOs were doing. We had 4 sessions, federal and international activities, where we ever talked about what we were doing. And we had one on SDO sessions. We had a lot of good understanding of what are the high priority stuff that they are working on and what we should be looking at. We talked about the emerging technologies. We also had a very lively session on QA, I must say. But good positive feedback from stakeholders. I think over 140 people attended virtually. This was just a pure virtual thing. We had originally scheduled another one, follow on November 13th, but we couldn't do it. So next slide, please. So that in September, in response to many of the action items, we had put out this database, extensive database of all the codes and standards with more specificity that we are involved in the public site. The link, you can click the link when you get the slides, but I think the Christian presented that in late September. But we certainly would love any feedback from you all. And it's very expensive, expansive. It covers a lot of those items. It's over maybe 800 lines of all the codes and standards. So please take a look and let us know what feedback you have. So this shows how transparent we are. And we also have incorporated some of them, whether they are risk-informed performance-based or what involvement is in terms of priority. Next slide, please. So the next standards forum, which will happen on January 28th in person, we're having a hybrid option, I mean a virtual option, but in person is highly encouraged at the NRC headquarters. We have topics, in fact, you would see the public meeting notice today. We have 4 topics that we will cover, whether it's in session or presentations. The one on endorsement efficiencies, that will be an NRC presentation. Our standards executive will give that to inform you what steps we have taken in making the process more efficient. I think it's exciting, but we have to wait. Then we do have a session more on a workshop style format on commercial standards. This wouldn't be like 4 people presenting and Q&A, but it'll be more of a workshop style. And any thoughts you have, all of you, please send that to either me or the 2 contacts you have on whether important questions that these sessions should answer or anything like that. And if you want to present something, please let us know. And then we also have another workshop style format on QA. And then we have one more of a traditional session on risk-informed codes and standards development, where we'll have topics from several interested speakers. The link is there in this slide, and you can contact either of those 2 or me with anything further information. Next slide, please. I think that should be my last slide. Yeah, so we have made, I think, tremendous progress since last year. And I think a lot of people have been really thinking hard about it, looking at efficient ways in light of all the challenges we had faced. I mean, challenges will always be there in life, but we keep moving. The participation database is live now and open for feedback. It's one of the vital codes and standards, one of the vital tools that we use to accomplish our mission efficiently. Again, it is not the only way, but I just want to let you know that. And we are committed to continuing our staff engagement with codes and standards. It's particularly important in terms of the endorsement efficiency plans that we have. That's all I have. Next slide. I think there are some links. And the next slide is acronyms. So that's all I have. Yep.
Yep.
1, 2.
And we've got a question online, so we'll start there. So how does the NRC efforts, it's listed under action 3.1, I believe it's about basically prioritizing, identifying codes and standards. How does that differ from the ARCSC survey and assessments? Or maybe another way of asking that is, how does what NRC is doing with regard to prioritization and tracking codes and standards, how does that relate to what ARCSC has been doing?
Yeah, so we got input from not just ARCSC, we got input from ASME, ANS, I think IEEE, as well as ACI on what their priorities are in terms of codes and standards. I think we factored that in. We also looked at what is important for us in terms of meeting our mission efficiently. And those are all in the database. That's why we want feedback. I don't think there's a lot of any misalignment, but if there is, that's what we want to know. So that information is there and you can compare. We also have all the letters that we got from the STOs as well as ARCSC in the public website in Adams. If you don't have it, please contact us. So that'll give you some additional things to look at in terms of any misalignment. And do understand that we have limited resources. And I know that one of the SDOs wanted representation on one of the committees, but we don't have people. And the other challenge we have is participation is extremely crucial and important, but it's also, when it does involve travel, it becomes that much harder because travel has become a little bit more restrictive and a lot more justification is needed, how it aligns with the mission, whether it's mission critical. No. Yes.
Raj, along the lines of how ARCSC interacts with NRC, I mentioned earlier that we have a product available on using risk-informed performance-based approaches in a decision-making framework. Now, we have an NRC representative on the task group that I chair. And how do we make sure that this product is something that NRC looks at in the context of all these action items that you have provided?
So we did have, that's, I'll tell you, it underscores the importance of RIPB for us. So despite all the challenges we have in staffing, we were able to provide a representative for that task group, which normally we don't, right? So we are getting feedback from them, from the staff member involved. We are looking at it. I do not know whether it'll be any form of endorsement or not, but certainly if it's submitted to the NRC for review or comment, I think we probably might be looking at it at that same. But right now it's evolving. And as we do in other, it's nothing different from what we do in other STO working group committees, is that we provide our feedback, our comments as the codes or standards are being developed. And to the extent it's factored in, it'll be important when the endorsement does come into, when it becomes important. But not always our comments are necessarily taken to shape the standard of code. I mean, because we understand we are only one of the participants in the whole process.
But the question I have goes to, again, the kind of process that would be available for something that is not a traditional document kind of review. I'm not talking about producing a document that we request NRC to review, because this is not going to be a standard. It's going to be a guidance document, which is a decision-making framework available, on the ARCSC SharePoint site. And of course, the NRC rep has access to this, but it seems to me that the process elements that you showed in your action plan, should have a home for this, given that NRC is spending resources, on
Yeah, well, I'll take the feedback. I couldn't probably give you an answer that you'll be satisfied with. I've talked to you a number of times about it. So we will, this is broad ranging. You have one document that you're talking about, but the risk-informed performance base is overarching topic in many, many codes and standards. So I think we can do everything and fit that in, but I will get back to you on that question.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hey, Raj. Thank you for all this, Mike Melton. I'm in the developer camp. Where's the NRC at with harmonization of codes and standards with the international community? More so with the established regulators, you know, like in the UK, Canada, Japan. Mark brought up, you know, some of the policies about energy dominance, but I mean, in the US, that would be more export for us. So it's, in my mind, it's becoming less of a nice to have and more of a necessity for business development and project development internationally. If there are regulators, you know, internationally that have approved material standards, building standards, structural standards, seismic standards, and of course they're in use in operating plants, there can't be that much of a gap between standards. And now I'm thinking harmonization needs to become a little bit stronger to utilization. And I just want to put that on your radar. In order for us to take advantage of our gold standard, you know, regulatory approval, if we had smaller steps to take to show development in other countries and meet their standards, that would help everybody. So anyway, yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to get up to speed on where you're.
Yeah, I didn't have some information. This was asked by one of the commissioners also. Anyway, we did have a presentation from IAEA, the last standards forum. I don't know whether you had a chance to attend. So all the slides are available in the database, public website that we have for the standards forum on September 25th. Please take a look at it. We had IAEA rep talking about harmonization, and especially with respect to commercial standards. NRC is also engaged, has a trilateral MOU with UK and Canada, where we leverage a lot of expertise, knowledge, and information sharing with respect to licensing. We have, licensees can use any codes and standards. It's just that they need to justify whether it's applicable for the design. So NRC doesn't preclude that it has to be only standards that's developed in, with some specific STOs. So there are a number of avenues, but I think it's good feedback that you have. And if you can probably send us a feedback with more details, I think especially to the R standards executive Christian Arguas, because he is extremely responsive. I'm just putting him on. All right. Yes. Am I stopping any of you from a break? Don't you want to have a break? Yeah, go ahead.
So you mentioned wanting to use large language models to help with endorsement.
Yeah.
I've talked with the SDOs like ASME about that, because they have a policy that no sensitive data of ASME shall be entered into an AI tool without the express written permission of ASME.
I totally understand. That's not what we are trying to do. We are trying to use this to develop a reg guide based on the comments the staff had already provided. And it's not going and inquiring the staff. I totally get the legal element there. It's just to make our work easier and more efficient so that we can get reviews and prepare the draft reg guide or a final reg guide more efficiently.
Okay.
But totally understand.
So I want to get to a couple comments and one question online, and then we'll wrap up with the one in the front, and then we'll go to break. But we got a couple online. I want to kind of give them their due. I'll kind of summarize. Ralph Hill had some comments tied to plant system design PSD1, which is an ASME standard that's about to be issued. I think it's already been balloted and approved. And so he was just commenting on that. The Deep Fission, I believe, is planning to pilot that, and he wanted to call attention to that and have NRC consider using that as a possible pilot for working in concert with the Deep Fission work. The actual question is from Sven Bader online. The question is, Raj, will the endorsement efficiencies towards commercial codes and standards, identify what types of reactors may be endorsing the codes and standards for, or is the NRC relying on the codes and standards themselves to identify what reactor designs the commercial codes and standards are being applied to?
Well, I mean, that is a difficult question to answer. First of all, the endorsement efficiency is for the codes and standards developed by the STOs. We're not developing anything new, right? Or I mean, if it's specific to some reactor, for example, Division 5 is specific to high temperature reactors, the endorse it is specific to that. Yeah, so that's what we are looking at. In terms of commercial codes and standards, I do not know where we are in terms of endorsing those. These are all the nuclear codes and standards that I was talking about, what we've been doing in terms of making the process more efficient. What was the second part of the question? I think, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the question was really around in applications of commercial codes and standards, you know, does NRC intend to kind of communicate what the application or limitations are, or do the actual, does that have to come from outside?
Oh, well, when we endorse it, we will have limitations and conditions, etc. there. So.
Last question, and then we'll go to break.
Okay, thank you. Rich Stadel from General Electric. I think it's worth mentioning that the NRC has endorsed documents that are not technically standards, right? So, you know, going back to your question, for example, there are EPRI technical reports that have endorsement from the NRC.
Yes.
So some of the reg guys that are out there are not really endorsing standards, but they're endorsing other types of documents. So there is a process for that. I think.
Yeah, that's what I was mentioning. We submit it to the NRC as a topical report or something like that. There's a process to it.
Right.
It's not just a representative from NRC sitting in a committee, external committee, they develop a document. It doesn't automatically entail endorsement.
Right.
Okay.
The other thing, as we were performing our gap assessments, you mentioned in your presentation that the NRC endorses both nuclear and non-nuclear standards, right? And the majority of standards, at least in my area, digital INC, are nuclear. But like, for example, the computer standards, the computer industry publishes those standards. Now, understandably, a lot of the gaps that are identified, most of them are directed towards the nuclear standards because those are more technology specific.
Right.
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 So a lot of recommendations are being made to basically reroute those endorsements to the wider industry standards. But this is more of a comment than a question, but there is a downside to doing that though, because the nuclear industry has much less influence on those standards. So if there are issues with those computer industry standards, it's almost impossible for us to drive those. Whereas the nuclear standards, they're a lot more flexible and versatile, right? So it's just an observation.
Yeah, thank you. I know you know Sheila Ray and Ismail. So yeah, I'll let them know. I think you pertinent comment. I think we've talked about that.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Raj.
Thank you. Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
Yeah, and everyone online and in the room, we're going to take our 15-minute, well, Don, did you have something?
No, I just want to turn it back to you, Andrew. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we're going to take a break now.
Yeah, 15
And-
minutes. We'll be back here at 11 o'clock sharp Eastern time. So folks online, this is your chance to get up from your table and stretch your legs. So see everyone back here in 15.
Hey, she does know the legal language very well too. So I'm not sure you're a lawyer, but you're pretty close to it. So I do want to, without further ado, I want to introduce Rani Franovich and let's hear what she's got to say on what Deep Fission is doing. Rani?
Thank you, Don. Thank you for your kind words. And I'm not an attorney, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express once upon a time. It's good to see everybody. And thank you to EPRI and NEI for hosting this workshop. Yep, I am Rani Franovich, Vice President of Regulatory Strategy at Deep Fission. As Don mentioned, I spent 30 years at the NRC, including 6 years as a resident inspector at Catawba Nuclear Station, where I learned the regulatory craft and cultivated a knowledge of integrated plant operations. Thereafter, I managed NRC license renewal projects, license enforcement actions, reactor oversight programs, nuclear security policy, organizational culture initiatives at the NRC, and advanced reactor licensing projects. I left the NRC in 2021 to influence U.S. energy policy and legislation, eventually founding my own consulting and expert witness services practice. My topic this morning is an answer to a question Don posed as we were preparing for this workshop. What do advanced reactor developers need from standards development organizations, SDOs? The answer involves a broader topic, really, and that is regulatory modernization, and as Mike mentioned earlier, harmonization as a national imperative. So as I tell my story here, questions are welcome. Just raise your hand and I'm happy to entertain them as we go. Next slide, please. Okay, this is what we need at Deep Fission, a practical, outcome-focused requirements management framework that offers a coherent, traceable decision-making structure for our safety case without unduly constraining innovation. Our gravity reactor combines proven pressurized water reactor technology using conventional LEU fuel with novel deep borehole siting. By placing our small reactors a mile under the ground, we leverage natural geologic containment and passive cooling. The hydrostatic pressure of a water column above the reactor approximates operating pressure, eliminating the need for a thick steel reactor pressure vessel. We apply a high volume deployment, rapid deployment model and expect to eliminate significant construction and supply chain costs. But we need right-sized regulatory requirements and supporting codes and standards to do that. And we cannot wait for them. Soon we will submit our safety case to the Department of Energy for authorization under the Reactor Pilot Program. Our demonstration may very well inform the rules, codes, and standards that we need to commercialize. To that end, let's review the early history of the ASME code for boilers and pressure vessels. Next slide, please. Well before the atomic age, our lives were transformed by the Industrial Revolution. In the 19th century, steam power was expanding rapidly. Railroads, steamboats, and early industrial boilers were everywhere. Unfortunately, engineering practice and safety standards were inconsistent or non-existent. In the US, hundreds of boiler explosions occurred annually. They were caused by poor manufacturing, overpressurization, lack of inspection, and improper materials. Public pressure for engineering oversight and uniform standards was growing. In 1880, the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, or ASME, was founded to standardize engineering practices, advance knowledge of engineering mechanics, and improve public safety. That is ASME's raison d'etre. Next slide, please. While ASME initially addressed many mechanical engineering topics, boiler failures remained a predominant and urgent concern. The defining event occurred in 1905 when a boiler exploded at the Grover Shoe Factory in Brockton, Massachusetts. You can see in the photo on the left that the factory was very large, occupying what looks like a full city block. It was completely destroyed. Many people were killed or injured, dramatically accelerating the push for a uniform, enforceable boiler code in the U.S. Next slide, please. ASME published its first boiler construction code in 1914 and made it publicly available in 1915. The code established rules, design formulas, workmanship requirements, and provisions for mandatory inspection by authorized personnel. This code became the foundation for what we call today ASME Boiler and Pressure Vessel Code. I'll call it just the ASME code. Next slide, please. Over the next several decades, the ASME code expanded dramatically in scope. Other professional organizations emerged as well. ISO was established in 1957. In 1963, IEEE was formed. That same year, ASME published Section 3 of its code in support of early nuclear reactors. To its credit, the ASME code has reduced boiler and pressure vessel fatalities to near zero in jurisdictions that require compliance. Next slide, please. Its proven record for over more than a century is a testament to the power of rigorous engineering coupled with professional responsibility. But the code evolved from a boiler safety standard into a comprehensive, multi-volume engineering framework. Today, the code is an empire consisting of over 30 books divided into 12 main sections, some of which are listed here. I'll note that the volume of any code requirement is commensurate with its level of prescription. At Deep Fission, we are exploring right-sized alternatives for our technology and safety case. Next slide, please. Switching to a different but related topic, when Part 50 was first published in January 1956, it was fewer than 7 pages and comprised only 43 sections. Naturally, Part 50 has expanded in parallel with codes and standards. New requirements in response to lessons learned from large light water reactor operating experience increased the volume, level of prescription, and technology-specific applicability of Part 50. Next slide, please. The original Part 50 did not include provisions for codes and standards. That would come 15 years later. Next slide, please. When an authority with jurisdiction adopts a standard, it becomes code. Section 5055A was published in 1971. It was fewer than 3 pages long and included provisions for meeting ASME and IEEE code. Fewer than 3 pages long in 1971. Next slide, please. When I was researching the evolution of Part 50 last weekend, I was a bit surprised by the language in 5055A subsection B. Quote, as a minimum, the systems and components of water-cooled nuclear power reactors specified in paragraphs C, D, E, F, and G of this section shall meet the requirements described in those paragraphs, except that the ASME code and symbol need not be applied. An N-stamped component comes at a high price point, but that was not always required by the NRC. At Deep Fission, the safety cost benefit analysis for alternative codes and standards to demonstrate safety, which was initially ASME's raison d'etre in 1880, may be the path we choose. Next slide, please. Subsection B1, Bravo 1, acknowledged generally recognized codes and standards, except as required in other paragraphs of the section. Subsection Charlie pertains to pressure vessels and invokes, quote, the requirements for Class A vessels set forth in Section 3 of the ASME Boiler and Pressure Vessel Code, applicable code cases and addenda, end quote. I'd love to hear from others how they interpret this regulation and when the in-stamp need or need not be applied to procurement actions. Any thoughts? There are a lot of seasoned, wizened people in this room and online. I am curious. Okay, well then we'll segue. Anyone here a fan of college football? A few hands. Ever hear of legendary coach Nick Saban? Nick Saban. Oh yeah. When he retired from Alabama in 2024, he had 206 wins to 29 losses and a 16-7 record in bowl games. The Crimson Tide won 6 national championships under Coach Saban's leadership. How did he do it? Well, he had rules, right? The rules made sense for the application. And he endorsed those rules like a modern day Hyman Rickover. And it worked. Next slide, please. For those of you who watch college football, you're familiar with this commercial. They play it every Saturday. And these clips are from an advertisement for VRBO as an alternative to vacation rental with a killjoy host who's got lots of rules. So the point of this slide is just to say that today's rule book for forged reactor vessels, cooling systems, and mega containment structures does not translate well to our gravity reactor or our rapid high volume deployment model. Next slide, please. So Deep Fission wants flexible options. Next slide, please. When I joined the NRC in 1991, the regulatory approach was to enforce compliance with all regulations, driving high O&M costs, often without a commensurate safety benefit. In 1994, Towers Perrin, an independent management consulting firm, now they're called Willis Towers Watson, uncovered chronic and persistent problems with the NRC's management of the regulatory process, specifically NRC's focus on compliance with prescriptive deterministic regulations. Towers Perrin claimed this distracted attention and diverted resources from operational safety. 4 years later, Joe Colvin, then president and CEO of NEI, testified before Congress, calling for NRC to replace an outdated regulatory framework with one that is focused on safety performance versus compliance. In response, Congress threatened to slash the NRC's budget unless it reformed. Well, that got the commission's attention. It got the staff's attention. NRC insiders like me call this the near-death experience. In 1999, and to avert this existential crisis, the commission directed the staff to develop a, quote, RIPB approach to regulatory decision-making that combines the RI and PB elements defined in SECI 98-144, or the white paper, and, quote, apply these concepts to NRC rulemaking, licensing, inspection, assessment, enforcement, and other decision-making, end quote. Next slide, please. In 2000, the NRC implemented the reactor oversight process. I was a resident inspector at the time. Naturally, there was resistance to change. The following year brought 9/11. Post 9/11 security orders reversed many oversight efficiencies that had been gained. Over the years, risk-informed became synonymous with probabilistic risk analysis, PRA. The NRC provided extensive training on PRA tools and methods, but neglected training and reinforcement of performance-based attributes. I may have gotten some training on that as an inspector, but that would have been back in 2000. And since then, I'm not familiar with any NRC training on performance-based attributes, despite the fact that it's in a commission policy statement or policy direction, I should say. So the commission's direction to modernize was left incomplete. This has not been helped by its attorneys, who prefer prescriptive regulations because they are enforceable. Despite the commission's direction in 1999, regulations and licensing frameworks have remained largely deterministic and prescriptive, and they have grown over time. The requirements in 5055A have expanded to 63 pages. None, however, refer to the in-stamp. Again, the volume of any regulation or code requirement is commensurate with its level of prescription. Next slide, please. So what does it look like to be performance-based? Well, they're emphasized in the UK and in Canada and in Poland. And as I learned when I was at the IAEA in October, they're actually adopted by a lot of other regulators as well. But they receive little to no deliberate thought or intentional dialogue in the US. As a result, there's no cohesive or shared understanding of what performance-based means or should look like. Some dismiss performance-based values and virtues outright. In recent months, the chair of an ANS committee and a member of the NRC staff have referred to this policy as, quote, just a 25-year-old memo, end quote. To be clear, the 1999 Staff Requirements Memorandum was instrumental in averting an existential regulatory crisis. To my knowledge, this policy has been neither reversed nor superseded. In fact, the NRC has been reminded of it in legislation that has been enacted over the last 5 or 6 years. Next slide, please. This is what performance-based decision-making looks like for the ROP, specifically deciding what level of inspection and oversight was necessary and sufficient in 2000, the year 2000, to ensure adequate safety performance. In light of industry safety performance and soaring capacity factors since 2000, many can and have argued that the inspection now far exceeds what is necessary and sufficient today. An objectives hierarchy follows a requirements management structure with fundamental objectives and subordinate means objectives. The ROP's fundamental objectives are reactor safety, radiation safety, and safeguards. Implied in this structure is that the public health and safety mission is assured if level 1 objectives are met, and level 1 objectives are met if level 2 outcome objectives, represented here by ROP cornerstones, are met. The ROP cornerstone of mitigation systems illustrates second-level performance outcome objectives that fall within the area of transition to operational flexibility. This is analogous to developer flexibility in a licensing framework. Stated differently, a requirement should not identify level 2 outcome objectives. It should identify level 2 outcome objectives, but not impose how they should be met. For some advanced reactors, design features may render certain level 2 outcome objectives unnecessary based on dose consequence. Next slide, please. Using the same cornerstone as an example, a level 2 objective might be to demonstrate adequate mitigation of plant challenges. Under the ROP, The Mitigating Systems Performance Index, or MSPI, serves this function. Lower level design features and programmatic controls achieve the level 2 outcome objective, but should not be prescribed in a technology inclusive framework. Doing so can result in unnecessary requirements, causing undue regulatory burden and complicating international licensing and deployment. Another example of performance-based regulation is 5065, the maintenance rule. In my humble opinion, the maintenance rule is one of the most modern and effective requirements in the CFR. Next slide, please. In 2016, the NRC's EDO testified before Congress. The topic was, again, regulatory reform, modernization, increased transparency, and accountability of NRC. The EDO assured Congress of his commitment to efficiency and readiness by 2019 to review applications for advanced reactors under a new licensing framework. Meanwhile, the industry pursued the licensing modernization project for use under Part 50. 3 years later, NEMA was enacted, defining modernization in RIPB terms and mandating a technology-inclusive licensing framework. In response, the NRC sought to codify the LMP. The draft Part 53 rule was deemed neither useful nor usable by the industry. This was during the development of the language for the rule. So the proposed rule package that was delivered to the Commission in March of 2023 consisted of 1,252 pages. That's a lot of regulation. And it lacked a coherent decision-making structure. Imagine the challenge of navigating such a voluminous, prescriptive licensing process in an embarking country, let alone in the US. The legacy would be a rigid licensing basis with limited operational flexibility, leading again to high O&M costs. I hear from John Facemeyer this morning, my friend from NEI, that the final rule package may be issued as early as next month. We'll see if it still requires a PRA and other more prescriptive items. Some believe Part 53 might be more flexible than expected. That is encouraging to hear. But for Deep Fission, we do not see it as a viable licensing pathway for rapid high volume deployment. Next slide, please. To reinforce mandates for regulatory modernization, in 2024, President Biden signed the ADVANCE Act. Section 401 directs the NRC to submit a report. Now, I think it was due last month, it may be in the works, a report to Congress that examines existing and needed codes and standards for manufacturing and construction in nuclear energy applications. Recognition of consensus standards is consistent with both U.S. government directives on regulatory efficiency, like OMB Circular 119, and international harmonization objectives, like the ones that Mike referred to earlier under IAEA's Nuclear Harmonization and Standardization Initiative, or NESI. Section 501 emphasizes the need for culture change to enable safe civilian deployment of nuclear energy for the benefit of society. In response, the Commission updated the NRC's mission statement to more closely align with the 1950s policy under the Atoms for Peace program, a policy that endured under the Energy Reorganization Act of 1974, which separated promotional and regulatory functions, yet maintained the value proposition of nuclear energy and nuclear materials to improve the general welfare. Next slide, please. The executive ordered a regulatory modernization in May of this year. including culture reform at the NRC. In response, the NRC is undertaking a new expedited rulemaking to deliver the technology-inclusive licensing framework that was intended by NEMA. This alternative to Parts 50, 52, and 53 must accommodate high-volume licensing. In parallel, DOE established an authorization framework to facilitate near-term demonstration of innovative reactor designs like our gravity reactor. The demonstration of our safety case is expected to streamline commercial licensing by the NRC. All of these mandates are very important for Deep Fission to achieve project objectives and enterprise goals. Next slide, please. An impediment to reform is comprehension and communication. NRC and industry stakeholders frequently commingle RIPB terms and concepts, further obscuring the solution path for codes and standards. This diagram depicts RI and PB approaches to regulation as orthogonal along different and independent dimensions. Risk is a continuum ranging from deterministic to risk-informed to risk-based. By contrast, prescription and performance-based approaches lie at opposing ends of the spectrum. The prescriptive regime defines not only what the safety and security objectives are, but precisely how those objectives must be met. The arrow pointing north represents the volumes of prescriptive regulatory code that have accumulated over decades of commercial reactor operation. By contrast, the shaded zone under the horizontal axis represents an optimized balance of RIPB codes and standards. This is the sweet spot mandated by NEMA and the ADVANCE Act. The ROP, maintenance rule, ANS 30.3, performance-based decision-making, occupy this space. To be useful and usable, the licensing framework for high-volume deployment will need to hit this sweet spot. Next slide, please. All requirements should be related to a performance objective. If they are not, then arguably they are not necessary. In October, the IAEA hosted a technical meeting on licensing of new technologies and approaches to regulatory readiness and cooperation. I was the only in-person attendee from the US. NEI participated remotely. NRC was regrettably shut down, so there was no attendance from the NRC. As we know, regulatory harmonization is a vital IAEA objective. I argued when I was there presenting as a representative of the US that modernization must come first. During the meeting, an IAEA presenter used a pyramid of must, shall, and should statements to describe a new IAEA guide on safety standards. It resembled this figure, borrowed from Kent Welter of New Scale. The pyramid represents a typical requirements management structure using safety margins. Larger safety margins afford greater operational flexibility. Next slide, please. Code requirements should specify what is necessary and sufficient for reasonable assurance of adequate safety. Developers could then demonstrate how those objectives will be met. A transition area between level 1 and level 2 objectives represents a shift from what is required at a high level to what is optional, affording flexibility. For our gravity reactor, system boundaries will need to be maintained at relatively low differential pressures. This introduces a new concept. To my knowledge, ASME code does not exist for this. Non-nuclear standards may suffice. We're exploring the options. Next slide, please. So in summary, 4 interlocking executive orders are designed to reboot America's nuclear enterprise and position the U.S. for global leadership. Some early signs of responsiveness are encouraging. For example, the NRC recently expressed receptiveness to NEI's 2204, utilization of ISO 9001 and other non-nuclear suppliers for safety-related applications. This is a welcome step in the right direction. Nevertheless, there was opposition. One stakeholder asserted, quote, nuclear energy is inherently high risk, end quote. And NRC's endorsement, quote, would dilute the safety margins and set a troubling precedent, end quote. Another wrote that, quote, quality assurance must remain uncompromising, end quote. Now, these provocative assertions do more to harm public perception of our industry than support mandates to modernize. They are at odds with the national interest. To overcome enormous status quo inertia, we need a common understanding of RIPB concepts, regulatory and legal acceptance of them, and movement away from old guard establishment interests and protectionism. Next slide, please. So I'll leave you with this thought. Over the last decade, the NRC has been directed by this nation's leadership from both sides of the aisle to modernize through RIPB approaches. Prescription is the enemy of reform. U.S. companies cannot establish or reestablish global leadership in this industry if the regulators pulled in different directions or lobbied to regulate the same way it has always done, or rely on prescriptive codes and standards going forward. Deep Fission is prepared to work with the NRC and SDOs to inform and facilitate that modernization. Thank you for your audience. Questions? Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike.
Oh,
Thank you,
this
everyone.
is Ralph.
Thoughts, comments?
I'll start off with some kind of comments. Some of these were answered online during the, but I think your presentation did kind of spark some questions and some curiosity online. I'll just start with one thread here, which was the question raised: does Part 50 still allow non-N-stamp vessels in the U.S., or is that from a bygone era? There's mention that NRC does allow alternative methods. And then Farshid mentioned that N-stamp is accepted for LWRPVs, but other standards can be used as long as they can be proven acceptable to the NRC during its review. I'll leave it to you to kind of respond to the general question of N-stamp. Is it required? And how does that fit into today's understanding on at least Part 50?
Yeah, good question. And I'm gonna take a swag to answer it, because this is not an area where I have a lot of knowledge and expertise. But I can say that you can always request an exemption from an NRC requirement, and a code or standard that the NRC has established to be a requirement. That is a process that requires documentation and back and forth negotiation with a regulator. In terms of regulatory practice, there may be alternatives allowed, but there are some members of the NRC staff who think there's only one way. And so this is part of the culture shift that the administration and the previous administration are trying to address. So that's kind of my perspective. John has his hand up. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add that the regulation as written is for light water reactors. So if you are a non-light water reactor, in theory, at least, you would not need an exemption to not have an M stamp.
Did everybody
I'll
hear
have
John
to-
in the room? I know they did online. Okay, so what John was saying is that the regulation is written for light water reactors. And so technically, if you are a non-light water reactor, you do not have to request an exemption. The requirement simply doesn't apply. And there was an ISG, what was the name, John? 2022-01 that explains this. This was the first of the RCAP ISGs. Thank you, John.
Oh, Ralph Hill online, I believe, has his hand raised and would like to come off mute. So Ralph, I think you have the floor. Let's see if we can hear you.
Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Go ahead, Ralph.
I'm trying, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Ralph.
Oh, thank you. So Ronnie, we are
Actually,
kindred
Ralph, if
spirits
you're
and
speaking, we can't hear you in the room. So can you put the statement in the chat by chance? I
have put
apologize.
some
Looks like
statements in the chat.
we may be muted in the room.
I have put statements in
Any
the
others?
chat. But
Rich Saddle, General Electric. There are actually two processes. There's an exemption process from regulation, and there's also alternatives, which is the AZ clause in 5055. And that only required the NRR division director, right, level approval. So it doesn't go up to the commission for a vote or anything like that. And that's been used several times in the past as well. But yeah, obviously everyone wants to stay within the rules as much as possible. Can you go to slide 23? Can you show slide 23? I do have a question about that slide. And while he's pulling that up, I really hate the word efficiency, because efficiency to the regulator is way different than efficiency to the designer and efficiency to the licensee. Because a regulator, so speaking as, I was a regulator for many years, the most efficient evaluation I can do is completely prescriptive, because it's just check boxes. Yes, no, yes, no. It's easy to do. It takes very little time to do that. So if the NRC is directed to be efficient, believe it or not, it's pushing them in the direction of prescriptive regulation. You see what I'm saying?
I understand your point. And I think if it were efficiency without the other provisions, you might be right. But when you say efficiency and risk-informed and performance-based and technology inclusive, it kind of makes it clear that prescription is not the intention. But, when Raj was here speaking before me, he even said, it'll be easier if you do it this way. Easier for the
Absolutely.
NRC, right? I caught that. You caught that.
Yeah.
So I see your point. It's a good point.
And there's a lot of people at the NRC, if they're being directed to be more efficient, that means they do their job, their evaluation task in a short time with very few resources. It doesn't require a lot of thought. And that's really the definition of prescriptive regulations, right? So I think that's part of the reason why that's a problem. Yeah, so on this slide, I just want to ask the question, because in INC, our primary regulation is IEEE 603, has been for many years. And that is not what I would call a prescriptive standard. It's very performance-based. It's not risk-informed, but it's very performance-based. And I don't see on this graphic here where, it's on the bottom. I see. So, yeah, so if you're dealing with a performance-based standard, but you don't apply risk-informed, I mean, that's pretty much the way we've been doing business for many years, right?
It's one way we've been doing business. Another way we've been doing it is deterministic and prescriptive, where it's neither risk-informed or risk-based or performance-based.
Yeah,
Richard,
so it creates a lot of subjectivity in the licensing process. So one clause that's used over and over in INC anyway is to the degree necessary, right?
Sounds like a Laura.
It stands out. It stands out like a sore thumb. And it's written in almost every important regulation, including single failure criteria, and to the degree necessary. It doesn't tell you what that degree is. It's really a subjective determination, and that's going to depend on who your evaluator is. It's going to depend on what your perspective is. So what meets that requirement from a designer's perspective is it can be very different from what an evaluator would think, and that's really the source of a lot of the issues that we've
I
had.
agree. And
Mhm.
it comes down to personalities too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So on your point about how there could be approvals for, departing from the requirements in the CFR that would be approved at the office director level, how long does that typically take?
For an exemption?
Not exemption, but you said
For
there's
for
an
an
alternative.
for the AZ clause, well, it can be expedited, and I've seen it done within 2 months
2 months.
at the NRC, yes.
And as long as?
Never happened.
As long as
Infinity.
as it wasn't approved by the office director.
Correct, yeah, so sometimes we would get into discussions with a licensee, and we would basically say that you need to either have an alternative or an exemption. And what they'll end up doing is they'll end up redesigning to avoid either process, right?
And so this brings me to another topic I speak a lot about, and that's leadership. Leadership. We need leaders at the NRC who understand these concepts of risk-informed and performance-based, who understand them and can direct their people to apply them, train them, and hold them accountable. These things should be in elements and standards of technical reviewers at the NRC. And so we've got some gaps here. We've got knowledge gaps, we've got lack of training, and we've got lack of leadership, reinforcement of expectations that this is the way we are mandated to regulate. And efficient doesn't mean checkbox. It means expedited timelines by not just, 20% or 30%, but 80%.
I have one other thing. So you mentioned policy that has been in place for a number of years, and the perception is that policy is not being followed, or it is in conflict with existing regulation, right? And I think that has been an issue. So when the commission comes up with a new policy and it gets put in the Federal Register, it's if it's a policy you like it's talking about risk-informed performance-based, it's easy to say, okay, problem solved, let's just do that. But the underlying problem with that is the policy doesn't automatically spur a change to the regulation, because the regulation still has to go through rulemaking. So when you have prescriptive-based regulation, and a new policy comes out to say, use risk-informed approaches, what should happen is the staff should immediately revise that, initiate rulemaking and revise the rule.
That's what they were directed to do.
That's what should happen. In an ideal
1999.
world, that would happen, and it would happen in an expedited way, such that, you could actually implement that policy.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the rulemaking takes so many years to take place.
Right.
And it's such a cumbersome path that often the policies, they don't last long enough. They get overridden, or they get pushed out in the past.
I think this is a different kind of scenario where the commission directed the NRC to apply the terms and definitions in the white paper to not just oversight or assessment, but rulemaking, enforcement, all of its regulatory functions. But here's what happened. The NRC initiated the ROP, and the currently operating fleet got relief. They stopped complaining to Congress. Congress moved its eye on another ball, and the work was never finished. So you're right. It should have been, plans for rulemaking, plans for changing enforcement policies, all of this, licensing frameworks, but there wasn't any follow through, or the follow through was limited to oversight and inspection. And even that has not changed since 2000. In fact, there have been proposals to increase inspection in some areas like safety culture. Luckily, that did not make it very far, but the fact that it was pitched was amazing in this environment.
Okay, Ralph, I want to give Ralph Hill one more chance and to test out a room audio. Ralph, go ahead. You had something you wanted to respond to regarding PSD1. Go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me now? Can you hear me in the room? Hello?
Okay.
There you are. I can hear you, Ralph.
Oh, great. Okay. Ravi, we are kindred spirits. Your
Ralph,
presentation
I could
summarizes.
hear you, but I can't now.
Oh, wonder what happened. Let's see. Can you hear me now? Says moderated unmute.
We can hear you online, Ralph.
Is there
you.
anything in the chat that he put?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it looks like, okay. Ralph, unfortunately, we can't hear you in the room now. Looks like folks online can hear you, interestingly. But you have put in some things in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and convey those and then let Ronnie follow up on that. Let's see here. So again, as most folks know, or many folks know, ASME, under direction of Ralph, have gotten the PSD1 standard has gone through balloting and approved. It'll be out probably in a month or so, I believe. He wanted to share that basically, again, for his perspective, he believes that, that standard itself addresses this idea of the sweet spot as you presented it. And ASME is also developing code cases to address alternative rules to also achieve that sweet spot. So Ronnie, since you're actually possibly going to be piloting PSD1, did you want to speak to that and how that fits in?
Yeah, I do actually, Ralph. I got some feedback from my engineering team that I'd like to share with you, and it's positive. It's positive on a couple of dimensions. InnoSlate is a platform that the Deep Fission engineers are using. It's a very unique and versatile software tool. And one of my engineers tells me the ASME PSD1 standard will be the first ASME standard offered with a cloud-based version. And that cloud-based version will be provided via InnoSlate. The ASME PSD1 standard itself, a Word file draft, which is then converted to an improved PDF, was developed within and then published from InnoSlate. This should give an idea of the potential integrations between design basis information developed within the tool and licensing documentation based on that information. Example he uses is an image in the PSD1 flyer that I received from Ralph via the workshop today. He then says the PSD1 process includes using risk insights, qualitative, quantitative, or both, as an integrated part of the design process. InnoSlate provides for requirements authoring and traceability of those requirements to design information and its associated verification/validation. And based on his experience with developing the new scale plant design and its associated licensing effort, InnoSlate appears to be a viable tool for minimizing the siloing of different engineering design disciplines, which typically occurs in complex design projects, resulting in delays or errors that are expensive to remedy late in the design process. So the feedback I've gotten, Ralph, on InnoSlate and the PDS1 document that you're talking about has been pretty good. Anything else, Andrew?
Yeah, any other things coming in, Andrew?
Prasad?
Rani, I'd like you to address this issue that you referred to in your talk about the terminology associated with risk-informed and performance-based. You know, what I'm observing is that people use the word performance-based to mean many different things. So, I mean, as part of the task group on RIPB and also as a representative here of Deep Fission, you know, recognizing the importance that all developers at least have a consistent understanding of what it is to say that something is performance-based, right? What can we do? Because what I'm finding is that people use the term performance-based, not necessarily invoking the SRM to SECI 98144, but you know, in a way that they see as you know, fitting their particular purpose. So is it necessary that we develop a common understanding and the role of this SECI 98144, SRM, the white paper that you referred to, as being the basis, or if it's not necessarily the basis, what other basis can you propose?
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack in that, Prasad. I'll just say that there's also a difference, or could be a difference, in how these terms are interpreted, depending on whether you're talking about a rule or a design approach, a regulation for licensing versus an approach to designing. And the answers may be different depending on what you're talking about. But the commission's been very clear for regulatory purposes. And the NRC staff has agreed in recent meetings during the Part 53 development that those definitions still govern today for regulation. For design, it could be a different conversation, but the design should be able to be accommodated by a performance-based regulation. And if it's a performance-based design, meaning you start with, how do we protect the reactor? How do we protect people from radiation? How do we protect our material from theft, diversion, or sabotage? If you start out with those things and then identify the functions necessary to achieve those objectives, and the rule is set up with a similar kind of structure, then it kind of flows. At least that's how I see it.
Well, you know, what I see is for a designer, if they use a truly performance-based approach, there would be no need for any exemptions as long as they're meeting the intent of the regulation at hand. You know, so this whole idea that you can always ask for an exemption or some kind of you know, some other means, to me, that doesn't make sense because the commission has already said that if you use the performance-based approach, which involves, certain observable parameters, certain attributes of the acceptance criteria, and also certain attributes about encouraging and rewarding improved outcomes. If it doesn't have those attributes, then it seems to me it should not be called performance-based. Or if it is called performance-based, then there should be some kind of an explanation as to how it represents the performance-based approach.
Yeah, what you're describing is the conflation and the confusion that I mentioned in my storytelling that creates an impediment to progress and we've asked for meetings with the NRC, workshops to talk through what it means to be performance-based. What does it mean? What does it look like? Do we all agree? And if you're calling this performance-based, tell me how. Tell me, give me the evidence that supports your assertion. Unfortunately, the NRC has not, up to now, entertained that. They've said no. I'm not sure why, other than there may be some knowledge deficits on the NRC staff side that, they're not ready to host a workshop to talk through these things yet. My hope is eventually they will, because it's going to be hard for the NRC to be successful if stakeholders are talking past each other and past the NRC using these terms somewhat cavalierly without any, like I said, thoughtful and deliberate intention and clarity.
Okay, let's say we set the NRC aside, but how about the other side of the stakeholder population, which is the developers? Now, let's say Deep Fission is fully committed to this approach, but yet if there is no substantial common ground among the other developers, that also, it seems to me, poses a problem. So what can we do to improve a common understanding among the developers?
I guess my answer is it's important to have everyone on the same sheet of music. Everyone on the same sheet of music, but the NRC needs to be on that same sheet of music too. Because right now we're all thinking, what's the bullseye that the NRC is going to draw for us? Because that's what we're going to aim for. And we need a bullseye that still allows for innovation. So maybe EPRI could host a workshop. Maybe ANS could host a workshop. Maybe NEI could host a workshop. But you raise a good point, but the NRC needs to be part of that discussion.
And I would say that's the reason why I feel that, the involvement of NRC in this task group that we are involved in, is important. And it's important that we get NRC to recognize that this effort is worth something.
Yeah. So the NRC staff member who referred to the white paper as just a 25-year-old memo is on the RIPB. Okay.
I've got quite a long kind of text chain online, not related to this topic, but going back to kind of the ASME Section 3 end stamp, I think it's kind of spurred a lot of conversation. I just kind of want to go through, I think this is probably the last comment and question before lunch. Does that sound good? Okay. So starting off, we have the statement that basically ASME Section 3 in the end stamp 5055A requires compliance with Section 3. Compliance with Section 3 is completed by applying the end stamp. The stamp is a tiny cost compared to the design, fabrication, examination, testing, and all the other activities that go into compliance with Section 3. Then I've got a response here, or a kind of a question follow-on to that, which is in the context of RIPB that may allow for or determine use of an alternative standard or approach other than, let's say, N stamping and ASME Section 3 compliance? Has there been consideration of what impact that would create in assuring that the product produced will meet the design intent from both the perspective of the owner and the regulator, that is going to require that the owner makes that case? And so the comment is made that it seems like there would be a need for increased owner engagement on QA with the suppliers if you're pursuing an alternative standard. And so the statement is made, the N stamp costs more, but comes with kind of a built-in administrative process, QA process for production, installation, repair, et cetera. And that's where the bulk of the cost comes in, the pedigree. So when considering, the side of cost reduction, is it worthwhile?
Is it worthwhile to consider alternatives to
because of
ASME?
that? And then there's some more, and I'll leave it there. Well, and then there's one more, allowing purchasers to go to non-certificate holders for Section 3 work is not feasible. Very strong statement. Non-certificate holders will not be experienced in the requirements to implement them effectively. So I think you're getting the gist of the conversation online here. So I'll let you speak to that.
I'll speak for Deep Fission. Why do I pay for all of that robustness when I have a reactor canister, thin-walled, a mile underground, under a mile of column of water that equalizes the pressure across my reactor? Why would I pay for it if I don't need it to demonstrate my safety case? We're trying to take out the cost, construction costs, manufacturing costs, procurement costs, supply chain costs to make it viable. Okay. Don?
I'll just kind of comment that the point was made that actually perhaps ARCSC can tack on a task to address Prasad's question or the proposal to develop a path to get everyone, especially the developers, on the same page with
Yeah,
regarding to
I second
RIPB. So anyways, I think that is kind of the charge that we already have to some extent, but
That's what Don just said.
Yep.
And we should do it.
okay.
Let's do it. Thank you, Don.
I have a quick question. Do you guys have any experience with using the alternative clause? Because we've used it in INC, but I'm not aware that it's really been exercised. It's the AZ clause in 5055.
Is this the one that goes to the office director for approval?
So yes, exactly.
I am not familiar with that process.
Okay, it's very rarely used. And every time I've gone through that process, you get to the end and it's like,
Was it worth it?
I should have been able to
Right.
avoid this.
That's
right?
the point. That's the point. There may be alternatives and processes, but what does it take to get through them? Why do we have to invest in those processes? Why can't it just be afforded by flexible regulation or codes and standards? Okay. Thank you all for being such a wonderful audience. Don?
All right, thank you so much, Ronnie. I thought that was a well-rounded and very interesting presentation. I think everybody would agree. So we thank you really for your perspectives from Deep Fission. So with that, we're going to break for lunch right now, and we're back at what time? 12:45?
Yeah, we'll be back here. We'll try to make it at 12:45. Should we maybe push it out by 5 minutes? Okay, so we'll be back reconvening at 12:50 Eastern time. So everyone can get a break.
All right.
Time
Thank
for
you,
lunch.
Andrew.
Thank you.